We will continue on the program with our next panel. We have a series of panels today. And this one is going to be by games investing. It will be led by Dan Licari, who's a long-term advisor and coach for game companies of different kinds. He's now also working as a broker, helping Gaming Malta to with all of their different relations. So I'd like to call up on stage Dan Licari, David Clark, Philippe Dow, Johannes Brauckmann, Catherine Bygrave, Jacques, Benchetrit, and Adrian from Bitcraft. Please come on stage.
Hello, everyone. And hello, my name is Dan Licari. As Maria mentioned, thank you. I've been working, coming down to Malta here for the last 12 years. And during that time, I've seen a lot of changes, some of which you've heard already so far. When we talked about the idea of Playcon and what's going to happen in the next version, one of the things that we wanted to ensure that one real key component to the ecosystem building is funding and investment. And part of the collection of people on the stage today coming from different perspectives in the games, publishing, and investment space. And instead of talking about the details, what I'm going to allow each of them to do is give their take on what's happening and tell a little bit about where you're from. And the idea is there is the changing world of games publishing and games investment, and each of them will be able to talk a little bit about the perspective. We might have some time at the end for questions, but actually the whole idea of today is to get talking with people, to interact. So ideally over lunch, we'll have a chance to meet everyone and get a chance to ask questions that we will be prompting as part of this panel. So if I can start, if it's okay, just to my left here with Philippe.
Hello.
Who you are and where you come from.
Hi, I'm Philippe Dao. I'm from France. I live in Paris, and I've been working in the game industry for almost 20 years. So I'm a publisher and developer of video games on mobile, PC, and console. I first started my career working for Empire Interactive, and then moved to the mobile games with joining Gameloft. Worked for Orange Games, and I recently co-founded Asmodee Digital. It's a board game company, and I launched the digital branch. And 2.5 years ago, I co-founded a new company, a bit different from other publishers. We are called Atin Interactive, and we are focusing a lot on data and influencers. And for the job as a publisher, we believe that data is very important today, because with the democratization of game development, you see many projects, and it's very difficult for a publisher to find hidden gems among thousands of projects and thousands of games that are being developed everywhere. So we have kind of developed a solution, a platform to monitor and observe all the trends and the games that are in development and that are trending on social networks and on other sources. And on the other side, our DNA is also influencer. We do believe that for the publishing today, influencers are the #1 marketing lever, and it's really important that we have like a global network of influencers, and we want to work closely with content creators when it comes to make our job, meaning publishing games, because we believe that it's important to involve them at a very early stage in our scouting efforts. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Philippe. And part of that, that influencer influence and the aspects that are going to be changing around. We also have a panel later with some influencers from around the world, which also talks around that subject. Next on our panel, I'd like to give the floor to Johannes. Johannes is from Gamigo, and he's actually one of the returning speakers from the last Playcon. But I won't steal any of your thunder.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Johannes. I'm head of licensing at Gamigo. We are a German-based publisher we do, but most of our revenue is actually in North America. We're mainly focused on MMOs, multiplayer games, anything with live operations. On the PC side, but also mobile games, free-to-play, casual, free-to-play. And traditionally in our DNA, we ported like Asian MMOs to Europe and to North America, and later on developed a bigger business of buying up companies basically and developing their games further, which helped us through the last couple of years. So now we just wanted to stretch our legs a bit more and get more games basically into our portfolio. And in that position, I'm basically a game scout, so I have to travel to conferences in Europe, meet people, play games, and drink the occasional beer. It's all right.
Excellent. Thank you, Johannes. Next up, we have David Clark.
Hi, folks. Dave Clark. I run my own business, Cuba Entertainment. I've been in publishing since, well, I think I'm the third person to say 1992. I thought I was unique,
about that year.
But I'm not, which is very disappointing. So publishing, video games publishing is my world, PC, console. I've worked for the big publishers, Eidos, Sega. Small publishers, SCI, set up my own business 14 years ago. Since then, I'm a founding director of Green Man Gaming, the online retailer. And I've recently founded another company called Arcus Key with my partner who's based in Shanghai. And we specialize in taking games from the West and promoting them into China, which is a bit complicated, which we won't talk about here and now because it's a big thing. But if anybody wants to learn more, give me a shout. And in terms of sort of, the topic, the changing face, what does that all mean? Well, I kind of think that the things that are changing in publishing, I think there's two things. One is democratization. There's been a lot of talk about that already. So it's all how everything is now free, Unity, Unreal, all the game engines, crowdfunding, everything. Everything's democratized. And the challenge, that's brilliant, but it's a huge challenge because, as we were just saying, the discoverability of games is a nightmare. You've got 11,000 games a year launching on Steam. I mean, it's just impossible to cope with. So that's a huge challenge, and I think COVID, again, that's been discussed a lot. COVID's a huge challenge, but in a different way to I think people have talked about. And COVID showed what the video games industry is capable of doing, of how far it's capable of reaching. And revenue numbers skyrocketed across the whole industry. The problem with that is shareholders have gone, ha-ha. Right, that's what you can do. Right, and I'm going to hold you to that. And of course, now everyone's going back to work and going back to school, and numbers are going down. And so publishers, game developers, industry, companies involved in the industry have actually got to work harder. And they've got to look at expanding markets, expanding platforms, moving into areas that are perhaps slightly out of the comfort zone. So those are the two challenges that I see within the world of publishing.
Thank you. And I think that a lot of these concepts that are coming up, you'll see them resonate throughout the Playcon conference in terms of where the challenges are for studios. And I think there's also the other side to it in terms of the business opportunities for people that aren't into games. And I think part of that is educating those investors that might be looking at other types of investments that are now stepping into this space.
Listen, investing in video games is notoriously fraught with pitfalls, but at the same time, there's huge, and again, COVID showed there's huge, monumental opportunities. It's just a question of how you identify them, which takes us back to, data, and as we were discussing, and finding the right game, and all that sort of stuff. So, interesting times.
Thank you, David. Next up is Catherine from Humble Games. And I want to steal your thunder, but I know that the difference with respect to where Humble's come from and where it is now might have something to do with some of that changing landscape, maybe.
Certainly, yes. So, hi everyone, nice to be here. So, I am Catherine from Humble Games, which is the publishing division of Humble Bundle. Some of you may have heard of Humble Bundle. The background is that we've been going for 10, 12 years, I think, as a digital storefront, selling games through the storefront digitally. But the main point being that you can provide a certain amount to charity. And over that kind of 12 years, Humble Bundle has raised over $200 million for charity. So once again, shows what the games industry can do. So Humble Games specifically has been going for a couple of years now. We've launched over 30 independent developer titles within that time. And last year, we were rated the 3rd highest quality publisher on Metacritic, which just goes to show that indie developers absolutely have the same level of quality as AAA. So over that time, I personally have worked in AAA gaming, and obviously now I'm in indie publishing, and I've seen a huge change in the industry. The big one that really sticks out to me, and particularly for this topic, is just the move from a focus on IP to a focus on people. And IP is always going to be important, of course it is, but the focus now is on who is it that's actually making that IP, and how do we support them, and how do we get the absolute best out of those people. And you see it even in the huge acquisitions of, for example, Sony buying Bungie. There was a lot of incentive for the guys at Bungie to stay and not leave after the acquisition, and that's because Sony recognizes that what's made Destiny successful is the people that are actually creating it, that understand their gamer. And that's what we do at Humble, is when we're looking to invest and partner with a developer, it's who is it that's building this? What is their motivation? What's the story that they want to tell? How is that different from everybody else? And so we focus on it being a partnership. It's not that parent-child relationship that you sometimes see. It's how can we as a publisher really support that creativity? How can we bring it out and allow the developer to do the best content that they possibly can without getting distracted with perhaps some of the more boring business side of things. And so for me, that's kind of the big change that we've seen over the years, is that recognition, and quite honestly, it's come a little bit too late, that it's people that make games, and those are the people that we want to be supporting because they create the best content, I think, out of all of the creative industries.
Well put. I think there would be a lot of people in the room that would agree with you as well. So thank you, Catherine. And over the last, since the last Playcon, we had a delegation go over to GDC in San Francisco. And I think for a lot of the people there, particularly the publishers and investors, first question was, where is Malta? But actually, the next person on our panel, Adrian, knows it pretty well, I'd say. Adrian, the floor is yours.
So, born and bred in Malta, but quite new to the games industry because I actually come from the finance industry. I work at Bygrave Ventures, which is a venture capital firm. I joined Bygrave when it was a small up-and-coming emergent manager, 40, 60 million assets under management. Today, we're 800 million assets under management, focusing on video game and interactive experiences investing. We have offices in LA, in New York, in Berlin, in London, and in Madrid. And we're seeing new exciting developments happening in this space. My personal dream, what I want to achieve with Bygrave, is see a game go from a team and a dream to hiring their first employees, hiring their first executives, making those first deals with the large publishers, and then eventually becoming a game which the kids who come to these type of conferences love, know, and want to play. So that's hopefully what we'll manage to achieve over the next 8 to 10 years at Bygrave. And I kind of, when you first discussed the topic for today, my immediate thought was to go on to the financial models and the different business models that were emerging. So free-to-play, games as a service, play and earn type of methodologies. But actually what I really want to convey is what an exciting industry gaming is to be part of, because there's so much innovation and so much creativity in this space. And there's not only creativity from the technology side, which we heard from the earlier speakers, there's creativity from the business model side, but there's also a lot of creativity in the way you develop the games. There's a lot of creativity in the way you interact with the games, with things like user-generated content emerging, content creators being able to create. So it's not only a dynamic of the developers build the game and the users play the game, but there's so much interactivity happening. And yesterday I heard a very exciting pitch where you're even seeing cross-development on technologies, right? So you have an educator who builds a course in an interactive space, in a virtual reality space, but you can enjoy it on a TV screen, and you can interact with it on your mobile phone. So as an investor, even though there are 2.5 billion gamers worldwide because of the distribution that has been enabled by mobile, I think we're just getting started. And it's such an exciting place to be able to invest in. And as I mentioned earlier, I come from the finance world, and I remember answering my clients saying, according to this regulation, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. The gaming world is flipped on the other side, which is endless possibilities. I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who was studying how the physics and dynamics happen in a submerged world. He was trying to learn the physics and the mathematics and the biological elements of building a game inside a submerged world. So you're educating yourself, you're learning about science in order to create these experiences for people out there to share and love. What a fantastic place to be involved with.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you, Adrian. And I think that one of the elements you touched on is about that team in a dream. And I think one of the things that by the Basecamp philosophy in terms of providing the incubation space and maybe that wraparound that can help those people with some of the elements they don't know in terms of the commercial elements and their connections. Our next speaker is from GTR, Global Top Round, and is about finding those dreams and teams and hopefully providing them the resources to make to the next stage. The floor is yours, Jacques.
Hello, everyone. So I started off my career at HSBC in mergers and acquisitions. After that, I worked at Houlihan Lokey in special situations M&A, so complex cross-border deals and fundraising. Took a year off because investment banking will do that to you. And then I joined Zordix as head of mergers and acquisitions. It's a Swedish video gaming company. We deployed close to $90 million in value in about a year and a half. During that time, I saw that there was a very real need for advisors focusing on the sub-$150 million deal size in video games. So I left Zordix in order to join Global Top Round and to head up the M&A and fundraising advisory part of the company. So if ever anybody is looking to sell or to raise funds, please reach out later. GTR also is an accelerator. We have a $40 million venture capital fund. We have an agency that connects studios with publishers. And finally, we have a game testing platform called G-Round. So for me, just to be able to add to all the interesting topics already covered, I think what I find interesting is the increased sophistication of the investor base and the way that it's widened over COVID. And what I mean by that is you have investors that previously weren't interested in gaming who have taken notice of the space. You have sovereign wealth funds who are now looking to invest here. You have new venture capital money. This has led to, obviously, the ability to back more projects, but also wider appeal and wider knowledge of the space as an investable universe. And so I think that being able to tap into this wider pool of capital is going to be what's going to drive the next wave and step change in gaming.
Thank you very much. And I think one of the things that each of them touched on in some way, but also kind of leading on from what Jacques was saying, that a lot of the publishers, and as the world has changed in this space, not only have obviously been a lot more games being made, but there's actually now a lot more avenues to find funding. And the publishers themselves can be quite niche, depending on what kind of genre or what kind of platform they're working on. But I think for some of maybe the studios in the room and the companies that are looking for that next stage, what would you suggest that, because typical routes of funding might be friends and family to start with, they might then move to angel investors that are, giving you enough runway to at least make a demo or show what's possible, and at least be able to articulate what it is you're going to build and how long it'll take and how much it'll cost. But then there's obviously then the next layers up, in which the last two speakers, Adrian and Jacques, talked about, is where does that seed angel round then shift into a angel or a VC or a publisher combined to provide that, probably that you're talking over 200,000, maybe $500,000 range. with your advice, and I'll start from Catherine if that's okay, and then work around, mix it up a bit. But in terms of if you were to give advice for a studio that is in the space from getting their game on a platform or showing off and getting some numbers to actually then moving to the next stage, how would you suggest, what would be your advice to that studio in terms of how do I get on that ladder, or where would I be the best place to start from?
It's a good question. I don't think there's any one answer because ultimately every studio is different, every publisher is different, every route to market is different. I mean, obviously the basics, have a good pitch is a fairly obvious one. But I think the most important thing for studios and developers to do is to take a step back and think, who do I actually want to partner with on this? And how do I want to take it forward? I think sometimes you can get lost in the excitement of, I'm pitching to a publisher, I have to sign whatever they put in front of me. And actually not. Publishers operate in different ways. I'm sure that's the same for VCs, etc. And so you need to find who is going to be the best partner for you and who understands what you're trying to create and who is going to provide the support that you need. And to me, I think that's the most important thing for developers, because if you lose sight of what made you excited and motivated to make your game in the first place in the frenzy that is trying to get funding or publishing support, ultimately that can hurt you in the long run. You need to make sure that you keep a clear goal in mind of this is what I want to do and what I want to create, and don't fall into the trap of, well, this publisher is focused on narrative games, so I've got to try and adjust it to be a narrative game, because that's never going to lead to any kind of success.
Thank you, Catherine. That's great. And Johannes, part of the reason you're here last time, you were here for Game House, which is an incubator in Germany alongside... Sorry, at the time, yes. And I think that experience in terms of not what kind of support they need, and also along the same lines, how that ladder works for the companies that you've helped in the past in that rise.
In the past, in the Game House, we helped young startups basically get on the road to funding, get on the road to VCs and publishers. So I not necessarily oversaw their pitches, but I helped them pitch people, have them more prepared. And now I'm on the other side, and I'm receiving the pitches, which gives me a much better perspective of where the developer is coming from and how to approach us as a publisher. So I actually gave a talk to students at the SAE college 2 weeks ago, how to pitch to a publisher. And that was more for students, but it applies to pretty much anyone. First of all, you do have to practice. You have to prepare yourselves, and there's loads of there's about 600 publishers now on the power list, as I believe. So there's a very lot of people doing game scouting basically and actively looking for games. So if you just go to any conferences, you're more than likely to find one, because that's their job to go there. And most of these guys, and I know from the conference hopping of the last year, they're very approachable, they're very kind, they're very nice, and even if you don't land with them, even if it doesn't fit your game with the publisher, they're sometimes more than willing to help you out and put you in the right direction and then help out the people. So I think the key thing really is for anyone networking and then take it from there. And your first pitch is more than likely not going to be successful. So you prepare for that and then just go on and talk to people. And to your point earlier that now publishers have to work harder, I actually think they have to work a little bit smarter. And
absolutely,
we for instance like to work with the GTR. We have a long-term relationship with them, and we know other companies like them around, and it's much easier for me to have them pitch to me than me running around all the time. So they're doing the legwork, not really, but sometimes they do. And but because the colleague of mine who used to have my job is now actually working with Jacques, and so I know that he knows Gamigo pretty well. And if a guy from him comes to us, then I know it's a good pitch. And we have a couple one lines up, and I would be even more excited if the German game funding had been cut by the beginning of the week, but that's a different story altogether. But if funding is always a good essential part of game development, because you have to. It doesn't work with every country, but in the countries that they do have these services, reach out to those people, because they're usually very kind and helpful as well. and then they can bring you on the right path to glory as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And so the message is, they're not scary. In fact, they can be quite helpful. So reach out to any of them. I think maybe...
And buy a beer, it's good enough.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the thing that you don't know where to start at first.
Yeah.
But and I think when you have an incubator that allows people to think, okay, you're going to make your game, and these are some things you got to think about, but you also got to build this business. And about building that business around side of it, maybe is an accelerator more so that the next stage in the development, if you're along those lines, because you might have a game now, you might even have some numbers to show them, but that business side, how do you make that, and sort of the question of the GTR, and maybe in this context of how do they go about it? What would be, you say, the accelerator adds, and how, is it painful? Is it a long-term process? What maybe some of the things to think about if someone's going to go an accelerator route?
I do want to caveat my answer in that I'm really on the M&A and fundraising side. So everything I say with a grain of salt.
Noted.
Which is just generally true. But I think what the accelerator adds is framework. So people talk a lot about the business of games. So there's making a game, and developers know absolutely how to, or most of the time they know how to make a game. But they don't think about, like, first of all, what's the best way to structure my pitch, which you were talking about. And I'd like to take a tangent just to say the importance of a good story. So whenever I try to pitch a company or a deal or an investment, for me it always starts with the story. And I think that that's also what connects everything when you're going to pitch to a publisher, because I'm pitching to you because you fit my narrative, and we can continue building our narrative together. So as part of an accelerator, that's something you'll learn about. You'll learn about how to pitch. You'll learn about how to build a company, the nitty-gritty of running a business. We can help you hire the right people. We can help you with local governments. And we also have production support. So how to help move the game along, having an outside view on how the development is going. And it really is what you make of it, in that you can have as much or as little help as you need.
Super. Well, I've got 2 more, and I've got 4 minutes, I've been told. So, Adrian, if you have sit in, we'll finish up with Philippe, if that's okay.
Okay, so venture capital, I think game studios or people building in gaming need to understand the nature of the beast here. So we're money managers, and our duty is to return the funds given to us to invest in games with a return and then some, right? So we are very motivated in that way. So what that means in terms of the economics is that, speaking in general terms, when you're approaching a venture capitalist, you have to have a credible path or a good, convincing story as to why your game can be eventually valued at 1 billion plus. Why? Because when we look at potential investment opportunities, not only are we selecting through a very rigorous due diligence process, meaning that we invest in probably less than 0.1% of the opportunities we have, but even from those games or from those investments we select, the data from venture capital shows overwhelmingly that we're dealing with what is known as a power law dynamic. And power law means that it's only a few investments that make all the returns for the fund. So every time we put a bet in a company, we have to believe, and conviction is very, very important, that this company can become a $1 billion plus, 100 million revenue a year earning company, so that it can have the potential to make the type of returns that will enable us to hit our targets for our investors. So what we look for are paradigm-shifting kind of plays, right? Whether it's in the technology, whether it's in the game development side, whether it's in use of new ideas, new concepts, new business models, we are always looking on the edge. We are always looking at what's next. And not what's next in the next year, but it usually takes 6 to 8 years for these ideas, for these projects to incubate, to be built, to partner up, to make agreements, to make licensing agreements, and to eventually make those type of returns that we are looking for. And the way we select those startups is by having people inside the firm who are incredibly believing that this team and the dream can eventually make it to that 1 billion opportunity. So that conviction has to be very, very acute, very, very strong. We call it table-pounding conviction. So when you're in a meeting with a VC, that is the type of emotional feelings that you have to kind of get out of the meeting. And that continues building up the more you get to know the founders, right? So you meet the founders for the first time. What a great idea. The more you get to know them, you start seeing how their journey, their personal journey, educational, experiential, but even things outside of their professional realm, are all directing towards finding something fascinating, something new, something exciting. And those are the founders that make a difference, and that's what we try and back. It's not easy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound easy. Well, I suppose that tees it up nicely, because some of the passion and then some of the figures and data can also then come together, and using a tool to actually be able to articulate and to narrow it down to which ones you invest in. Maybe that's part of what you say.
Yeah, just I wanted to come back to one point about the funding and the advice to developers. So I think the developers today, they have more ways of getting funded. If you think 10 or 15 years ago, it was very difficult for a developer, apart from finding a publisher, to get funded to make their game. So today you have public funding, private funding, normal banks, and as you just said, there are more and more finance actors that are interested in supporting video games publishers. So the entire industry grows, and we see that the developers have more opportunities to make their game. And this is one of the reasons why you see more and more projects. It's not only the technology make it easier to make a game today, but also the funding routes are more and more numerous, so to say. So, and I believe that as a publisher, we think that using a platform or using data in general will be more and more important, and a way to manage risk, because as a publisher, you're also taking risk in developers, and it's better when you have data to support your rationale, instead of, okay, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I think this game is going to be a hit, and it doesn't work this way anymore, in my opinion.
That's a good way. Well, that's a good place to end the discussion. But as you heard here, they're not scary people. Come approach them. And in fact, during the lunch break, I would actually encourage you, if you have a question, to find them and have a chat. If you need anything else, you can also tweet through or contact the Gaming Malta team if you have any other questions. And there'll be more of this in the future. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you.
Thank you.